7 states will vote in their primaries tomorrow, setting the stage for House and Senate races this fall. Voters heading to the polls in California, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. Did you get all that? Let's break down a few, shall we, of those states. Seema Mehta is a political writer for the LA Times. Brianne Pfannenstiel is chief politics reporter for the Des Moines Register there in Iowa. And Jonathan Salant is a correspondent for New Jersey Advance Media. Okay, guys, Seema, let's start with you. California, as we know, Democratic stronghold, but Republicans are trying to hold on to some of the more competitive districts. Given the rough polling for Democrats this cycle, are they in danger of losing those seats, you think? Could we see some surprises?
I mean, there are a number of competitive congressional races in California. And we just had redistricting, which we have every 10 years after the census, which made some of these seats, for example, for David Baldeo, for Mike Garcia, and for Michelle Steele, much more competitive. And those are Republicans who are slightly endangered. There are also Democrats who are sort of put into riskier situations. Katie Porter, for example, her race became much more competitive after redistricting. So despite the fact that California is an overwhelmingly Democratic state, there are a number of competitive congressional races here.
So what are you paying attention to, Seema? You've been on this beat for a while. You know this state.
I mean, the statewide races, honestly, the top of the ticket statewide races are really dull this time around, which might explain why our turnout has been really dismal. Only 13% of voters have cast their ballots as of Sunday. But some of the more interesting races are down ballot races. Plus, you have the Los Angeles mayor's race, which is enormously expensive. More than $30 million has already been spent on advertising in that race. And then you have a really interesting recall attempt in San Francisco of the DA up there, Chesa Bonin, which has that's one area where we've really seen high voter turnout because voters up there are really concerned about crime, and that race has received a lot of attention. But aside from that, some of our gubernatorial race, our Senate race, they really aren't very competitive. So it's really down ballot races that are drawing more attention.
All right, and Brianne, let's get over to Iowa here. Several Democrats are fighting for the chance to take on Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, who's been around for a while, as we know. Do any of them stand a chance to unseat this 7-term senator? I mean, he's an icon up on the Hill.
That's a great question, and I think it's going to be a tough climb for Democrats, no matter who they nominate. But they've got 3 candidates that are going to be on the ballot tomorrow: Mike Franken, who's a retired Navy admiral, Abby Finkenauer, who is a former congresswoman, and Glenn Hurst, who is a rural physician and city council member. And so they all bring something a little bit different. They've all got a different tack to try to take him on. But as you mentioned, he's been in federal office for 47 years. He's seeking an 8th term. He's very well respected across Iowa Republican circles and even a lot of independents, is how he's won so many terms. So whoever is nominated is really going to have a challenge here. But some of the tactics that they've taken so far is really, turning that longevity into a negative, saying that he's been there too long, he's forgotten who he's fighting for, that he no longer has Iowans in mind. So we'll see who kind of takes that tact right now. Mike Franken is kind of riding a little bit of a late surge here. He's a retired Navy admiral, as I said, so his military record seems to really be resonating with some folks. He's making a direct pitch to people in the middle to try and bring in some of those independents and disillusioned Republicans who may want change.
All right, Jonathan, what kind of change is New Jersey looking for? Or do they not want change? What's your headline?
Well, the headline is this one race that's really competitive. It's the 7th district. Tom Malinowski won. He's one of 4 Democrats to flip seats in 2018. The Democrats took control of the House national, and they did very well in Jersey. 1 seat now, the Independent Redistricting Commission redrew the lines, shored up 3 of those or 2 of those Democrats, and a third that won in 2016. But the 4th is Tom Malinowski in the 7th, a moderate area. He's running against Tom Kean Jr. Kean is a really big name in Jersey. His father was governor. His grandfather was a congressman. And that's a district that was much more Democratic in 2018 and 2020 than it is in 2022.
That's quite a legacy there. So, Seema, what issues are most important to California voters right now? And this is my home state where I'm from, and I'll tell you, it's been a tough ride through COVID, but I haven't been back for a while. So what's everybody talking about?
I mean, I think it's similar to what people are talking about in much of the country. Inflation, the cost of gas. I mean, I just spent, more than $6 a gallon to fill up my tank. Yeah, and then homelessness, crime, which, these were problems that really got exacerbated during the pandemic in terms of the level of homelessness you see around, most of the cities in the state. Crime, the smash and grab robberies we've seen in, San Francisco and LA and various parts of the state. So those are really top of mind. And then there's a lot of controversy over the handling of the pandemic, whether, people like Governor Newsom went too far, whether the mayor of LA, mayor of Long Beach went too far in terms of shutting things down. And yeah, that was, that obviously was a big push behind the recall effort last year that was unsuccessful. And that's also something that, that is still, though, motivating for Republican voters in the state.
Brianne, what hold has former President Trump's big lie had over voters in Iowa? Our John Carl here, who's covered politics for us for years, tells us that there's two ways to look at it. The power of Trump and the threat of Trump is how he defines it. How is that impacting the state of Iowa?
Well, Iowa is certainly Donald Trump country still. He holds enormous sway over the Republican electorate here. He's weighed in on several of these races, even where there's not a competitive primary, just to make sure that, he's weighed in, that people know where he stands, and so that these Republican candidates can tout that endorsement. He's endorsed Chuck Grassley many months ago, even though there's a candidate in the race. Chuck Grassley faces a Republican primary challenger tomorrow as well. It's a little bit of a stretch for State Senator Jim Carlin. He's really pitched himself as the Trump candidate, even though Donald Trump has weighed in favor of, he says, his long friend Chuck Grassley. So I think Iowa voters are still really looking to Donald Trump and to some of those endorsements. He's been in Iowa a lot through the caucuses and through competitive election cycles. Iowa voted for Donald Trump in the last election cycle, so I think he still holds a lot of sway here.
Final thought, Jonathan, you did lay out already that, all eyes are on that Senate race, but do we expect any big upsets as we look at some of the other races on the ballot?
Well, following up on the question in Iowa, we do have a lot of Trumpian candidates. President Trump called for a primary challenger to Chris Smith, who's the second longest serving member of the House in Washington. They've got a couple of people came through, but they couldn't raise any money. He never endorsed them. There are a couple of people running on America First platforms, also as again, supporting President Trump. Tom Kaine has a couple of primary challenges like that, but again, they haven't raised any money and haven't gotten any endorsements. The one primary possible upset in the 10th district in Newark, Donald Payne Jr., his father was a congressman. He's been a congressman for a decade. There's a young woman running against him who's a former political organizer, a community organizer, a former legislative aide, and she's raised enough money that the Payne is concerned. He has endorsement from Nancy Pelosi. They brought in Jim Clyburn, the majority whip for Raleigh. They've tried out a lot of endorsements. He's raised more money this year than he's ever raised before in his political career. So they're concerned enough about that race.
All right, Seema, Brianne, Jonathan, thank you all so much. Appreciate your reporting and appreciate you sharing it with us.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.